Good afternoon, everyone. I call together and call to convene today's meeting, Thursday, February 15th, with the Palm Desert City Council as related to the successor agency, redevelopment agency, and housing authority. This meeting will be conducted as a hybrid meeting as part of public access. Can we please have the roll call? Actually, we got to
Mayor
start the meeting officially. Roll call, please.
Pro Tem Harnik.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly.
Here.
Councilmember Nastandi.
Here.
Councilmember Truby.
Here.
Mayor Quintanilla.
Present.
All councils present.
Thank you so much. At this point, I would like to call forward individuals for public comment. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address.
Madam Mayor, I believe it's a pledge.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot the other part. I do apologize. I was looking at the consent. Okay, so if I can please ask Mayor Pro Tem to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. The inspirational comments this week will be provided by Councilmember Truby.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming here tonight to participate and witness your local government in action. Really appreciate y'all being here for sure. Last week, I was able to attend the Desert Arc Champions of Change annual gala, which was an incredible event and one I really always enjoy spending time with and around the Desert Arc folks. It was an event where supporters and Desert Arc clients alike were celebrated. And during the luncheon, I ran into a colleague who had served on the board of Desert Arc, and he related the story of how during his time on the board, he was able to witness the clients of Desert Arc who go out in the field and are able to work at regular jobs in restaurants, paper shredding, et cetera, the times when they receive their first paycheck and the looks that they have on their faces. And it was a really moving story. And it was a powerful reminder of how important it is sometimes to recognize the accomplishment of others, no matter how modest, and also to look past their shortcomings, no matter how severe. It is an acknowledgement of your fellow man or woman's worth and their humanity, and it certainly goes a long way to making our world a better place. Thank you.
Thank you. That was absolutely lovely, Councilmember Truby. At this point, I would like to request if we have a report from closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. There was no reportable action taken by the council at closed session this afternoon.
Thank you. Item number 9, awards, presentations, and appointments. We have a proclamation for the Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. Is Mr. Mark Scheibach, is that what you're here for regarding the proclamation, or is this public comment? Okay, thank you. In that case, do we have a representative here from?
I don't believe there is a rep. Oh.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Our proclamation in support of Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month reads as follows. Whereas colorectal cancer is the second leading cause of cancer deaths in the United States among men and women combined, and whereas colorectal cancer is one of the few cancers that can be prevented with timely screening, but 1 in 3 eligible Americans are not up to date on screening, and it is estimated that the number 1 cause cancer killer for those of ages 20 to 49 by 2030. And whereas Black Americans are 20% more likely to be diagnosed with colorectal cancer and about 40% more likely to die from the disease than other groups. And whereas colorectal cancer is expected to account for 11% of the cancer deaths among Hispanic men and 9% of cancer deaths for Hispanic women. And whereas in 2023, there were approximately 153,020 new cases and 52,550 deaths from colorectal cancer in the United States. And whereas the national goal established by the National Colorectal Cancer Roundtable is to strive to increase timely screening rates to 80% in every community for all Americans eligible for screening. And whereas increased education and community support services, such as those provided by the Palm Springs-based organizations, like the Cheeky Charity and others needed to enable the prevention and early detection of colorectal cancer and increase the chances of survival. And whereas observing Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month during the month of March would provide a special opportunity to increase awareness and offer education on the importance of early detection and screening of colorectal cancer. Now therefore, we, the City Council of Palm Desert, by the power invested in us, do proclaim March 2024 as Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. You would be so kind. For you, thank you for all the work that you do. Much appreciated.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Would you like to say a few words?
If you don't mind.
No, by all means,
Really?
spread the awareness.
Oh, I can't thank you enough. Well, recently, the American Cancer Society just released their 2024 facts and figures for cancer, and they announced that colorectal cancer has actually become the deadliest cancer amongst men under 50 years old, and it's soon to become the deadliest cancer amongst women under 50 years old. So it's no longer an old person disease. It's something that everybody needs to know about. And anybody under 45 is not going to get screened unless they recognize symptoms or they figure out that they have a family history. So this is why it's really important to get awareness out and education to people to let them know. I just met with somebody yesterday he had polyps every 5 years, and because of COVID, he didn't get screened. He went back in and they found stage 2 cancer. They're removing half of his colon in about 2 weeks. And he knew he had polyps. Like, it's just, you forget. And so talking to your friends and family about, if you're overdue, just get screened. I'd really highly appreciate that. And you could really save somebody's life or really allow them to have a much better rest of their life. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul.
Mhm.
And we have a presentation regarding the Riverside County Transportation Commission's 2024 draft of the Traffic Relief Plan.
Good afternoon. My name is Ann Mayer. I'm the Executive Director of the Riverside County Transportation Commission, and I appreciate the opportunity to join you all here today. It's always wonderful to be out in the desert. So thank you again very much. I am here today to give you a presentation on RCTC's draft traffic relief plan and to take your feedback. Before I begin, I do want to express my appreciation to the City of Palm Desert, in particular Mayor Pro Tem Harnick, for her service at RCTC, not only representing Palm Desert, but representing the Coachella Valley. And she even represents RCTC at SCAG as well. So thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for all of your service at RCTC. Thank you. So some of you may be very familiar with RCTC, but some of you may not be, and certainly some of your constituents may not be familiar with RCTC either. So first, let me share a little bit about us. RCTC is the Regional Transportation Planning Agency for Riverside County. We were formed in 1976. Over the years, we have accumulated additional roles and responsibilities, and the commission itself is 34 commissioners, so elected officials from each of the cities in Riverside County, all 5 county supervisors, and the governor's appointee. And I do feel inclined to say that Commissioner Kelly at the time, Commissioner Dick Kelly at the time, was very instrumental in the formation of RCTC. So I did want to acknowledge all of the work that he had done at RCTC as well. So not only are we the Regional Transportation Planning Agency, but we are a member of MetroLink. We are the provider of local, state, and federal funds to 7 bus transit agencies throughout the county. And we are also the Measure A half-cent sales tax agency administering Measure A sales tax throughout the county. And one of our more recent responsibilities is we are now the operators of the express lanes or the toll facilities on State Route 91 and on Interstate 15. And for many, many years, our priority has been to provide transportation services, options, programs to all residents within Riverside County. So I've just mentioned a variety of different things that we have coordinated throughout the county. Out here in the Coachella Valley, we have a very strong relationship with the Coachella Valley Association of Governments. My friend Tom Kirk is here. We work very, very closely together in trying to ensure that we leverage all of the local funding that we have here in Riverside County to bring as much state and federal funds back into the county as well as back into the Coachella Valley specifically. So many of the interchanges along Interstate 10 have had significant RCTC funding contributions. We are a partner at Sunline and provide local, state, and federal funding. Current Measure A has direct allocations of funding not only to CVAG for some of the transportation projects, but also a direct allocation to Sunline, as well as a distribution to your city each month for your local streets and roads work. So we are involved at all levels of transportation with many of the partners here in the Valley. So transportation has always been and continues to be one of the most important priorities here in Riverside County, in that so many people who live and work here in Riverside County depend on the ability to have mobility, but also to be able to get where they need to go when they need to go. And so in the work that we have done gathering information based on commission direction, we did a statistically significant poll in May of 2023 going out to many areas within Riverside County asking questions about perspectives. So the graph here that I'm showing on the screen shows that Coachella Valley residents' priorities: keeping roads in good conditions, pothole repair. The next one is no surprise to anyone: reinforcing highways, roads, and bridges from flooding and earthquakes, improving safety, and keeping senior, student, disabled, and veteran bus fares low. So you can see that there's very strong sentiment throughout the county for some really key transportation priorities that actually impact people on a regular basis. So as a result of the input that we've received and direction we've received from the commission, we have been preparing a draft traffic relief plan. A traffic relief plan was approved in 2020, and much has changed in the past 4 years. Certainly COVID has had an impact on all of our lives and on the way people work and on the way people commute. So the commission gave us direction to bring out our traffic relief plan, update that traffic relief plan, and come back out to jurisdictions like yours to seek input. So this plan is a countywide plan, including projects and services across the county. It is a plan that proposes to invest over $25 billion into transportation in the next 30 years. And I think what's also important to note is that this plan has unique components to address the different needs throughout the county itself. So that's what this plan is. What this plan is not is funded. So this is an aspirational plan for the county, in that we're trying to identify what our priorities are, what our objectives are, so that as we make investments throughout the county, we know what investments should be made. As I mentioned, this plan, it has components that are based on geographic needs. I will share some information related to the Coachella Valley component of the plan. We have broken up the county into 3 geographic areas: Western County, so it's basically everything from Cabazon to the west, the Coachella Valley, and then the Palo Verde Valley, which is also known as Blythe. Here in the Coachella Valley, I've mentioned CVAG before. We have coordinated closely on this section of the plan with CVAG staff in developing what a plan will look like or could look like here in the Coachella Valley. There are 8 different categories within the plan. That's consistent in all 3 geographic areas. So Safe Streets and Roads is mainly focused on road safety, road maintenance, sidewalks, pedestrian crossing, pothole repairs. Highways, as we all know, interchanges along highway or along Interstate 10 are very important here, as well as improvements along 111. Regional connections, is another category. Again, Highway 111 falls into that category as well. Public transportation, and that includes not only bus transit service, regular bus transit service, also Sunride, but also for us, the introduction for the first time ever for the Coachella Valley, a conversation about rail to the Coachella Valley, and that's our Coachella Valley Rail Project. Commuter assistance, which is expanding the availability of van pools, car pools, freeway service patrol, those tow trucks that rove out on the freeway. We would be able to have that included in the Coachella Valley as well. Active transportation, the Coachella Valley is really out in front, I would say, in a leadership role across the state with CV Link and the Arts and Music corridor. So active transportation important. And again, of particular importance out here, flood and blow sand mitigation for the impacts that occur during those weather events. And finally, environmental mitigation. So here are some examples of projects that are included in the traffic relief plan out in the Coachella Valley. I've mentioned many of them already. You can see this is really a multimodal conversation. It covers all aspects of transportation. But it's also important to note that it ties in the link between transportation, the need for transportation, but also the need for related environmental mitigation as well. So whenever we're talking about a transportation plan that does not have any funding and the potential mechanisms for finding that funding, and it would be a sales tax, an additional sales tax. This plan at this point, and again, no commission decisions have been made about whether or not this plan will evolve into an expenditure plan for a sales tax measure to be on the ballot. But again, this is an unfunded plan. So anytime we're talking about asking the taxpayers to tax themselves for funding, we also have to talk about accountability to taxpayers for the use of their money. This traffic relief plan also has categories related to independent audits, mandatory reviews, an oversight committee, all very consistent with how existing Measure A operates today. And the main goal here is that with local funds, it's a local voice, local control, local decision-making, and local accountability for elected officials directly to their constituents. It's also important to note that in any plan that we would have related to a sales tax measure, it would also have a cap on any administrative salaries. So what could a 1 cent sales tax measure do in Riverside County? We took a 30-year period and estimated with projections that over a 30-year period, a 1 cent sales tax in Riverside County could bring in an additional $25 billion investments here in Riverside County. With, as you can see here, not only would that directly support jobs, it would create workforce income and also generate economic output. If you look at the 3 geographic areas that I mentioned, just to show you how that would break out with a $25 billion projected revenue, about $20 billion in Western County, approximately $5 billion here in the Coachella Valley, and $100 million out in the Palo Verde Valley. So anytime you talk about needing to find additional revenues and raising taxes, there's got to be the conversation about the impact that that has on the individuals who would be paying for those additional, in this case, an additional sales tax increase. What did your constituents say when we went out with our statistically significant polling? Overall, 82% of Riverside County residents in that poll demonstrated that they saw a need for additional transportation funding. It was a generic question. We didn't say, where does the funding come from? We just said, do you think there's a need for additional funding here in Riverside County? The answer was 82% of the voters in that poll stated that they did think so. Here in Rancho Mirage, Indian Wells, and Palm Desert, the answer was 69%. And that was 69% initially supported a specific transportation funding measure, raising the sales tax to pay for the transportation improvements. So while that first question was generic, it just said, do you see a need for more money? The second question was specifically related to a 1% sales tax increase here in Riverside County to fund needed improvements, and here in your area that was at 69%. Overall, for the entirety of Riverside County, that was at 67%. So you can see not only are voters in Riverside County saying that transportation is important to them by very overwhelming numbers, they're also saying they see a need for funding and that there is a willingness by a majority of them to increase taxes to pay for the additional services, projects, and programs that they see that they need. So that is a very quick summary of the traffic relief plan that is currently out for review. Here we've got the QR code right up on the screen, so even people in the audience can focus in on that QR code, and it will take people directly to the draft traffic relief plan. We have a variety of different mechanisms for people to be able to take a look at the plan and or weigh in on comments. It's an interactive site that we have put up so people can zoom in and see what is applicable in their particular area. We've got an online comment form. It's really fascinating to me, and actually I think it's really a demonstration of how interested people are in this, how many comments we are receiving, not only coming in through the website, but through our social media and through some of these other mechanisms in terms of people sharing what's important in their community. And we're getting really constructive and productive comments. They're really helping us to shape the plan. So with that, I will conclude my presentation. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I have one question. How large was your sample size?
It was approximately 1,200. It was approximately, I'll be off a little bit on that. It was approximately 1,200, and it was specifically set up to be a statistically significant representation of likely voters.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate that.
Mhm.
Seeing no further questions, I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I would like to call up Mr. Tom Kirk from CVEC to present a relative dust mitigation.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, Todd, staff. Good seeing everybody in person. Air quality. I know two of you have seen this presentation before, so I'll make it quick. Air quality in the Coachella Valley. We're going to talk a little bit about PM10, particulate matter of under 10 microns, and the after effects of Tropical Storm Hilary. Got a quick little outline here, explain what PM10 is, what are control measures, what are the natural processes out here, what happened last fall. For those of you that were here last fall, there were some really nasty days for air quality. And what should we be doing about it? I think many of you know in the audience here, PM10 is little bits of dust that are smaller than 10 microns. They get into folks' lungs and they cause problems. Once they get into the lungs, they never come out. We are in a non-attainment area. It's a fancy word for saying the air quality isn't as good as it should be for PM10. You see the Salton Sea Air Basin there in the blue vertical hatching. And we are managed, our air quality is managed by the South Coast Air Quality Management District, which extends far to the west as well. So SCAQMD, that's South Coast Air Quality Management District, CVAG and the district have had a long association of working on PM10, and so have the cities here. We all the cities in the Coachella Valley adopted various PM10 ordinances to keep dust from coming off of construction sites and the like. We have a regional street sweeping program where CVAG operates a street sweeper or two or three that run through our major arterial roads. We extend that service up into Desert Hot Springs and to the southeast into Coachella. We know how the system works here. Rain happens, storms happen, sand moves into the lower part of the Coachella Valley. That sand is picked up, and the sand isn't PM10 generally. It's usually pretty coarse material. That isn't the problem, but when that sand ends up on the roads and we run over it a few times, it gets very small and becomes airborne and ends up in our lungs. So it's a natural system, and there's not a whole lot we're going to do to change that natural system. In fact, we protect that natural system as a part of our conservation efforts. So, what time of year is usually the windiest? I think most of us know it's the spring. The recent spike in levels. What this represents are federal and state PM10 standards, and the US standard is higher. It's not as stringent as the state standard. And for that US standard, we've only violated that standard 3 times in the last 10 years, until September and October of last year, when we had 5 violations, all in the span of about 45 days. How many of you remember those days? They were nasty, absolutely nasty. And I've never seen anything like it. I've only lived here for 3 decades, but in that 3 decades, I've never seen anything like those few days where we had really small particulate matter in the air. It was nasty. It's not just bad days. These are hourly readings from Mecca. On those windy days, if you're in Desert Hot Springs, you would have swore the air was fantastic. If you're in Mecca, downwind in the lower part of the Coachella Valley, it was particularly horrendous. And of course, at 3 o'clock, that's when kids are coming home from school. That's when a lot of people are outside. Hourly readings, again, off the charts. So we run this street sweeping program. We actually measure how much dust we pick up off the roadway. And you would expect us to be picking up most of the dirt during the windiest part of the year, the spring. But last year, most of our dirt was picked up after Tropical Storm Hillary. It was a mess. So we can't prove that all that dust was from Hillary, but I'm 99.9% certain that's the case. We knew that storm was unlike anything we've had in a long time. We certainly had some storms in the mid-80s that rivaled it. But it's been a long time since we've had a storm like this that had 9 inches of rain in just a few hours in the Upper Mission Creek drainage basin. And that mud from up in Mission Creek made its way all the way to Palm Desert, didn't it, Todd? And you're still probably cleaning up from it. This gives you an example of what we usually deal with is gravel and sand in our riverbeds. We got clay and a lot of it. And this fine sediment, 6,000 acres is our estimate. 6,000 acres of this fine sediment settled right next to the freeway, near the windiest part of the Coachella Valley. And you've seen some of these images. You've seen some of these images. You know the impacts. Of course, in the cleanup, we took that fine sediment and then piled it up along city streets. Once you pile it up, it makes it even more likely to get airborne. And we have a lot of that throughout the Coachella Valley. So, will that happen again this spring? The Air District believes that it's not going to. And there's some evidence in the last couple of months that we may have gotten through the worst of this, but we didn't want to take a chance. So I was running around talking to your city managers, to anybody that would listen, stabilize that soil as best you can before we get to the windy season. So we've been proactive. And by proactive, again, it's soil stabilization. You've seen that green paint on the ground. That keeps the soil down. And when you do that, you could actually get reimbursed by FEMA. So we made it that point too, because this was a federal emergency. It might take a few years, but you will get reimbursed. And so each of our cities have been out there being very aggressive with their contractors to make sure, this is another point, but get past that, make sure that we stabilize that soil. and the air district's doing a better job of putting out more monitors so we better understand local impacts. When it seems like it might be a great day in Palm Springs, it may not be in Indio or certainly may not be in Mecca. So again, this is happening. We're also working with county's emergency management system as well as Riverside County Health to understand if we had more admissions during that time of year last year, so we could, again, better predict what might happen with high winds coming up in the next month or two. So hopefully nothing does happen in the next couple of months, but it's better to be prepared. And I want to thank the city of Palm Desert for taking the steps you've taken to stabilize as much of that soil as possible. And I'd be happy to address any questions or comments. Mayor?
Questions, comments? My deepest gratitude for bringing this up, for making this an issue, for informing folks that not all wind is alike, how dangerous our current winds are as a result of how many of the top layers were washed away. So I greatly appreciate this as an asthmatic and public health advocate. So since we don't have any questions or comments, I thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this point, do we have any city manager comments?
I would like to invite Lieutenant Porras up to provide council and the public with a very brief overview of activities that he and his staff have been overseeing in the city over the last month or two.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak today. As 2023 came to a close, I wanted to share that your deputies responded to 48,369 calls for service within the city of Palm Desert. I have 3 deputies here that responded to some of those calls, not all of them, but some of them. And I want to bring them up here, introduce you to them so you get to know the staff that work in your city. First one is Deputy Stephen Nelson, Emmanuel Botello, and Mark Robles, who are assigned to the special enforcement team here in the city of Palm Desert. Deputy Nelson and Botello have been with the Palm Desert Station since 2019, and Deputy Mark Robles has been here at the station since 2022. So if you see them out and about, please stop them and say hello to them. They're very personable people. Next, I wanted to talk about, I've received some inquiries regarding helicopters here in Palm Desert. There are a variety of reasons that helicopters here, there are federal, state, and local agencies that use the airspace over Palm Desert, not to include private helicopters and medical helicopters. Although the Sheriff Department doesn't control the airways, FAA does, but I wanted to expand and let you know that the Sheriff Department has expanded its aviation service here in the Coachella Valley. That's going to mean there's more coverage in the Coachella Valley to include Palm Desert. The helicopter is a tool to assist our patrol deputies and is used in a variety of situations, such as looking for suspects, but most importantly, it's used for preservation of life. Some of those include lost hikers, missing children, and at-risk missing adults. Last month, we had an elderly man go missing from the corner of Fred Waring and Monterey. Our sheriff helicopter assisted by looking for him and making announcements. While some citizens couldn't understand what the announcements were, one person did, and they called, saw the man, and we reunited him with his family. So although some people may not understand or hear the announcement, it depends on the orbit of the helicopter. And all it takes is that one person to make that difference. And in this case, it was a great result. Last thing I wanted to mention is for the public to be aware of the Palm Desert Half Marathon and 5K that's happening February 18th. Our staff, along with the citizens on patrol, will be working the event. So please plan accordingly. Look for traffic delays and road closures. And more information can be found at palmdeserthalfmarathon.com, the city's social media, and our social media for the Sheriff Department. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Lieutenant Porras? Deepest gratitude for all you do.
Thank you.
Any other, Mr. City Manager?
Nothing further, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we move on to item number 11, Council Member and Mayor reports and requests for action, starting on this end with Council Member Truby.
Okay, well, I said I was going to mention it every meeting, so I will. The been attending the monthly meetings for the Salvation Army. They have a Veterans Expo planned for April 6th at their headquarters in Cathedral City. There'll be dozens of vendors there. So if you are a veteran or you know a veteran, it's a wonderful place to get one-stop shopping with lots and lots of services right there. We're going to honor some veterans and basically celebrate veterans and offer them lots of services in one place. So I hope you can make it. It's roughly 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. April 6th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. As Councilmember Truby mentioned earlier, there were a few of us from the council who did go to the Desert Arc luncheon, and it was truly inspirational. And to leave there, you left with a little bit different attitude than you walked in with. I had the opportunity to go to Scouts of BSA, which is the Boy Scouts of America, but they have changed the name now to Scouts of BSA because there are some females. And I was there to congratulate a young lady from Palm Desert who just became an Eagle Scout. And it's great to see when we see our youth achieving like that. Also, I've gone to 2 of the Do the Right Thing gatherings, and we had somebody from our Palm Desert Charter Middle School both times who were recognized. And it's, once again, it's great to see these students who do such great things and they get accolades for it, and they get a lot of reinforcement for doing that. RCTC, you heard from Ann Mayer, we're working on a lot. And of course, the train continues to be for the Coachella Valley cities. It certainly is something we work hard on, and a lot of good things coming. I had an opportunity also to speak for the city at the Holocaust Memorial event that was in Civic Center Park. And it was impressive to see so many students there. And it's a good time to remind everybody that the city of Palm Desert sends our 1 grade in our middle school every year to the Holocaust Memorial in Los Angeles, or the Museum of Tolerance in Los Angeles. Also, I was at SCAG, I'll be there again, I'm there every month. And when you heard Tom Kirk talk about non-attainment, and that's a big problem because when we are at a non-attainment level, that hurts our funding. And though when we look at what we just learned, certainly we have little control over the air quality. When we're talking about the storms and wind, there's very little we can do. But nonetheless, it hurts us on a federal level and of course at the California level. And sometimes there is punitive issues that come down with that. And it will be that they won't fund projects we have. So we do have to do whatever we possibly can to achieve attainment so that we can get those funds. We're continuing to work on the Connect SoCal, which is the planning document for all of Southern California. And Councilmember Kelly and I represent the valley in moving forward with that. Now they've cut off the public comment time. They was open for a couple months. We got some really great comments and we are moving forward with that. And I just wanted to mention, I know we were doing some work on some of the city's housing on Las Palmas Avenue. And I went by the other day just to take a look at it, and it looks amazing. We've done a great job, and it's one more things that the city should be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you.
Nothing to add tonight.
Thank you so much. On my end, I reiterate how wonderful the Desert Arc Luncheon was, and it ties in as we share with everyone, the city of Palm Desert being the recipient of an autism certification, where we are once again, since I am extremely proud of all of our staff, which now has 90% completion rate for the autism certification, which makes us the first in the state and the second in the country to do so. And seeing the participants and the clients of Desert Arc achieve such wonderful success is beyond words of how beautiful that was. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to speak at Palm Desert Charter to young women at the Ophelia Project, and it was moving, it was heartwarming, and then I came into my office and had thank you notes, and that was 1,000 times more special to hear from them. I was able to judge an art contest. This is the citywide art contest from kindergarten through high school. That theme was my favorite desert animal, and that was also a very joyful experience. And that is all that I have to report on that. So we will now move on to non-agenda public comments, item number 12. If I can please have Mr. Mike Scheibach. Did I say that correctly? Thank you so much, Mr. Scheibach.
Well, thank you for the time. My name is Mark Scheibach. I'm the Executive Director of the Desert Cancer Foundation, and I want to thank you all for allowing me a few seconds to speak here. We're getting ready for our 18th annual Paint El Paseo Pink this year. It's always the second week in October. However, during our strategic planning meeting with the Board of Directors, we realized it is at the same time of Yom Kippur. So when we submit an application to the city this year, and we've appreciated some staff help, met with the Gardens at El Paseo, they're fully supportive. Just want to give everyone a heads up that our application will be submitted, hoping we can move it this year to 1 week later, so we don't miss anybody having the opportunity to attend Paint El Paseo Pink. And I want to thank the city has been very supportive of Paint El Paseo Pink in years past. I've seen many of you there, and that's all I have to say. So thank you.
I can please have Dominic Moonhart step forward.
All right. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council members. I wanted to address the redistricting item for the new districts that you guys are going to implement for the next election. I would like to ask as a recommendation to have an independent redistricting committee. I know some cities have not wanted to do it because it is a lot of work, and it is a lot of work. But doing redistricting, some people gerrymander districts. We've seen it already happened. You can just look at Los Angeles as an example. And now the constituents in Los Angeles are trying to fight to have a redistricting committee. And that city should have had it a long time ago. Since we are moving on to districts here in Palm Desert, why not add a redistricting committee as well? Yeah, it might be a lot of work. Yeah, I know there's not that many people who don't have political views or are not involved in politics. I understand that, but it's probably the most beneficial way to do it, because if something like Los Angeles, and I'm not going to even mention that word, but if something like Los Angeles were to happen here, then there'd be chaos and anger within the community. And so that's my comment for that item. I also have the mayor rotation item that I wanted to speak on as well.
If I can stop you, since that
Go ahead.
item is on the agenda, if
Okay.
I can have you hold that part for that section.
Okay, yeah.
Can I
can
trouble
hold
you
that
to
part.
fill out another card with our
Yeah,
city clerk?
I believe I filled out
A
2
separate-
cards.
okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Much appreciated. Gary Leong, please.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. Gary Leong, full-time Palm Desert resident for 35 years. First time on the podium, hopefully my last. I'm here to speak on behalf, I'm here to speak on what is near and dear to my heart for this month, pickleball. Firstly, I would like to thank the City Council and the city for giving us the 12 pickleball courts at the Civic Center. It has generated a lot of use in the mornings, and I have seen residents from other cities, out-of-towners who come out to play, and they always compliment on the facility, so thank you. with such a great facility, and guess what? You've created a pickleball nut right here. And I am out there as much as I can. And what I would like to say is that from my observation and what I can see, the system that the city has implemented, the pedal up rotation system, works very well. It basically, during the peak periods, you will see about 60 to 70 players waiting to play. And the 12 courts only accommodates 48 players. So there are a lot of players waiting to play. And if we were to allocate specific courts to, say, beginners or intermediate or advanced players, it's going to be, unfair. So the paddle up rotation system works best for fairness for everybody to get a chance to play. Beginners who want to play by themselves can always paddle up, and when a court opens up, the four of them can go and play on the same court. So there's no mixing if they don't want to. So, so what I would like to add is that just keep the system that you have in place right now so that everybody has a fair chance of playing. I have 45 seconds more. So let me give a shout out to Director of Public Works, Martin Alvarez, for coming out to the courts one day, to see the action and work on the back end. You'll be a good player. Also, Sean Muir, who has taken a lot of our recommendations and implemented them, and also had the rec center person out there to observe so that she can give recommendations back to the city. And finally, if any of city council members would like to come out during the peak hours, I would be glad to show you the chaotic system that we have
Thank
there.
you so
that
much.
works.
Your 3
Thank
minutes
you.
are, I appreciate that. Thank you. If I can please have Manuel Sanchez.
My name is Manuel Sanchez. This is the first time I've ever been to a city council meeting, so bear with me. The reason I'm here is because I got a problem with an employee of the city. It's been going on for quite some time now. Am I allowed to hand you paperwork, evidence? Yes, no, maybe so? City clerk. Anyway, I live in the, of course, city of Palm Desert on Delaware Street. And I have an individual that I ended up having to take to small claims court because he didn't want to pay his bill. The guy works for the city of Palm Desert. His name is Jim McIntyre. I honestly don't know what he does for the city, but I know for a fact that he, and I was a witness to it, had a sign that said, no outlet removed from his property. I saw the employees from the city of Palm Desert removing that sign. And I contacted my neighbor and I go, look, I wonder if they're going to open up the dead end street finally. They never did that. There was a construction going on. They were building a house next to mine. And all those trucks with the materials and stuff like that would go all the way down to the street and have to back up all the way because this guy, Jim, had the city of Palm Desert remove that sign. When he didn't pay me, he left me no other choice but to take him to small claims court. I did that, and once I got him served, within 2 days, he goes, Manuel, come over here, I want to pay you. I go, great. So I went out there to get paid. He paid me, and he goes, Manuel, I want to be your friend, and he sticks his hand out to shake my hand. I go, you know what, Jim? You're not a friend. Lose my number. And that started off this thing where he has code enforcement officers going to do my house. I mean, you can see a letter there from one of the code enforcement officers. And what's crazy about it is that about 2 weeks ago on a Thursday at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I was going out for dinner. And Jim lives right across the street on the left-hand side. And I saw the code enforcement officer. I go, I wonder what the heck. Well, Jim saw me and he goes inside the house. Well, the code enforcement officer starts driving off. Well, he made the mistake of going down the dead end street. So I waited for him to come back out. And I go, what's going on? He goes, oh, I'm out here to check on our R&B. And I go, his house isn't, you know, he doesn't rent it out or nothing. I go, come on. And he goes, well, we got a complaint that you were using a chipper. And I go, yeah, it's Saturday. It was 1 o'clock in the afternoon and I got trees. Yeah, I got to grind up my wood.
I do apologize for cutting your 3 minutes are up. If I can direct this matter to our city manager for further action.
Okay, as a matter of fact, I do got photographs because, and I
Can you
apologize.
hand those to our
Sure.
city manager? I appreciate you.
Not a problem. Didn't even think I was going to take this long. Thank you very much.
Can I please call up Miss Barbara Wasserberg?
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. As some of you may be aware, there are many businesses in Palm Desert and all around the Coachella Valley that will not accept cash as payment for goods and services. This is because the central banks are preparing to replace all cash money with a digital currency, also known as the central bank digital currency. This war on cash has been going on for quite a long time, and COVID helped to accelerate that process. This will give the banks full control over humanity, as they can monitor every transaction, limit what you can spend, and even delete your funds, as it will be your funds at will. It is promoted as something that will, quote, make our lives easier, unquote. The truth is that it would mean total tyranny of all humanity. Our digital funds would be connected to our digital ID, which would be connected to our vaccine status and social credit score. Money will be traceable, programmable, and manipulated, which can pose many dilemmas and dangers in society. This is also a very important pillar in the structure of the 15-minute smart city that we are currently living in. Imagine no longer being able to access your funds when your digital ID shows that you haven't received your umpteenth vaccine booster, or envision how your spending would be limited as a result of posting something on social media that the government doesn't like. Or worse, what if the government simply erases your bank account because you don't agree with their policies? This has been happening already with services which close thousands of accounts because of people engaged in activities that oppose tyranny. Do you think this will be limited to social media? Once that they have full control over your finances, they can steal money at will, just because someone, quote, violates community guidelines. It happens all the time in communist China, according to the documents published by the Rockefeller Foundation and the World Economic Forum. The plan to install a digital currency controlled by the central banks has been prepared for decades. The strategy has been to launch this right after the first pandemic as one of their, quote, solutions for global threats. And now here we are. The Biden administration has also been tracking bank accounts of the American people, and the IRS is notified whenever anyone spends more than $600. This tyranny will also prevent people from discovering the truth of what is really happening in our country, as they will be punished with their finances when they look into the truth. Every last remnant of human freedom depends on mass resistance to central bank digital currency. Once a central bank digital currency is linked to all of your credit cards and bank accounts, then social control will be implemented. And that is the end of our freedom. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I please have Ms. Nancy Gutierrez?
I wanted to leave some forms for you. I know you won't be able to see them all as I talk, but I just want- Thank you for your time, the whole city council. My name is Nancy Gutierrez. One of my biggest fears is that Palm Desert may be eventually owned by natural asset companies. I'm just going to read a little bit about natural asset companies. This is titled Natural Asset Companies Proposed Rule. threatens property rights. Quietly on September 29, 2023, the Securities and Exchange Commission, at the request of the New York Stock Exchange, proposed a rule to create a new type of company called a natural asset company, or NAC. According to the proposed rule, a natural asset company would hold the rights to ecological performance, giving these companies license to control the management of both public and private lands through quantifying and monetizing natural outputs such as air and water. In other words, NACs would use the air you breathe as currency. Under the guise of climate change, NACs would make this control mechanism profitable without the actual use of the land itself by monetizing and leveraging the management of these natural outputs would further fall under the rules of sustainable development. Natural assets would now belong to corporations that are potentially run by special interest groups by requiring all production tied to the land to fall under the sustainability rules established by these non-governmental organizations. It doesn't stop there. Land belonging to the sovereign nations, like the United States of America, and private landowners can be subject to the control of NACs. For example, China could invest in a NAC in the United States, which would effectively create their stakeholder position in a national or state park, placing them off limits for any kind of production or resource development. It is also possible that private landowners could involuntarily cede control of their land to the natural asset companies, such as through the rules of a conservation easement or other programs that a current or previous landowner has participated or is participating in. So what is the motive behind all this? The answer is power and money and total control. What concerns me is that recently I read in the Palm Desert City Council development plans that you were consulting with Arcadis, possibly. Arcadis is a member of the World Economic Forum and is also a partner of the Rockefeller Foundation. The idea with these natural asset companies is that it's very similar to what Arcadis's plans are. For example, it says the same Arcadis is a partner of the World. Arcadis is a global natural and built asset design and
Thank you so
consultancy
much, Ms.
firm.
Bukitas. Your time is up. I
Thank you.
appreciate that. Mr.
Thank you.
Anderson, if you can please step forward.
Thank you very much. My name's Brad Anderson. I currently live in the city of Rancho Mirage. I'm going to pivot today. I wanted to speak on a few items, but I noticed you had the presentations and it spurred my interest. And the first one is the Riverside County Transportation Commission. I'm really concerned. This is the first I've heard of a proposal for a sales tax increase. I'm not for that. I don't think most people would be. 69% apparently in this area said yes. And I said, well, I don't believe that to be true. It wasn't that long ago, CBAG, our supervisor, Ms. Perez, not imposed, but suggested a sales tax increase for homeless programs and administrative costs more likely. But that didn't go anywhere, but the CBAG did give themselves authority to do a tax as a taxing agency. So that's something that we need to really be on the lookout as residents of this valley. And another item that was talked about tonight in the presentation was the PM 10, I believe, and PM 245 dust. I've sat through a couple of those presentations, and apparently dust, if it gets run over on the highway, it becomes this evil element. We live in the desert. We're always going to have icky wind conditions, sand blowing. It's going to always be bad. I'm not saying that can't be improved, but I just noticed today that the valley is alive with grasses and shrubs, and that's nature taking care of itself. We don't need to go spray stuff on the ground to keep the dust down, except for construction sites. That's really what it's planned for. I'm getting off the subject, but just because FEMA or we have a federal agency going to pay money, that's really what it's about, right? It's about getting money in this area and maybe having a fear mongering type thing for the season, for the tourism season coming up. So I would suggest if we pull back from the fear mongering on that issue and this wind blocks, just let nature take care of itself. And I know you're going to talk about buying a street sweeper. That's part of the solution, but it's this, well, anyway, I can go on, but that's all I have about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson. And our city clerk has informed me that there was a little bit of a confusion. So if I can have Mr. Moonhart come back and reclaim his 1 minute and 30 seconds to address Sunline.
All right. Yes, thank you very much, Madam Clerk and Mr. City Clerk. So I wanted to address Sunline. So I believe Councilmember Kelly is part of the board. Okay, so I just wanted to, as a writer of Sunline, I depend on Sunline a lot. That's my life of getting to and from places. Sunline needs to be cleaned up, as in literally be cleaned up. Majority of those buses are starting to get dirty. And today, as an example, you guys can't see from over here, but I got majority of it off. I believe I landed my hand on some human waste, as well as the stations. Those need to be cleaned as well. And it's not just one city that it's happening in. It's happening in all the cities, as well as all the buses that are old, that have been neglected. And it's gross just being in the bus and taking the bus and not being able to sit because the chair is really dirty because someone wants to use their bathroom time inside the bus. I'm trying to keep this G-rated as much as possible, but it's gross. It's really gross, and I don't even know what's in on my sleeve of my suit because it's disgusting. Same with the bus stop, especially at night with bus stops. Majority of those bus stops, their lights have been pulled out. There's no lights on the majority of the bus stops that have those solar shade structures. And so that needs to be fixed as well as the trash that's around and human waste that's also around the bus stops. It just needs to be cleaned up. And I know Sunline has staff problems right now, but at the same time, we cannot let Sunline be disgusting and dirty and be a trash potty or a porta potty, because that's health. Our health is on the line when someone has human waste or possibly.
I believe that you have gone past the 1 minute
Okay.
30. I was expecting I wasn't keeping a track.
Okay, yeah,
of that,
it said
but thank
3
you.
minutes, so yeah.
Yeah,
sorry about that.
I do apologize that I didn't reset or keep a timer in my own mind. Thank you. And I believe that concludes all of our non-agenda comments.
Madam Mayor, if I could just, in
Online?
case there's somebody on Zoom. For those on Zoom, if you want to participate in public comment, please click the raise hand button on your computer or smartphone. If you're joining in by calling on your phone, please dial *9 to raise your hand, and when called upon, press *6 to unmute yourself. And at this moment, I see no one with a raised hand, Madam Mayor.
Thank you so very much. At this point, I would like to move on to the consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar are considered routine and may be approved by one motion. The public may comment on any of the items on the consent agenda within a 3-minute time limit. Individual items may be removed by the City Council for a separate discussion. Do we have anyone on the council wishing to address any of these items? We do have 2 comments regarding section H and N, as well as W. Can anyone have a motion to?
I would move the balance as presented, please.
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor. We should take the public comment before you make any motion in case the public comment impacts that.
Okay, thank you. And that,
And after the public comment, the motion can speak to the entirety.
thank you. I appreciate that. If I can have Mr. Donald Ziegler regarding, let's go in sequential order. Mr. Brad Anderson speaking on item 13H, followed by 13N.
Great. Thank you again, Brad Anderson, City Ransom Mirage. I want to speak on the license plate contract or license plate reader contract that you're proposing tonight. I think another city has done this too. What actually, that's the problem. People have to read the staff reports on all this stuff to actually know what's going on. But apparently you will get a deal instead of paying $2,500 per camera. You can pay $2,500 per camera for up to 5 years versus the $3,000 that they want to charge you now. And so you're extending the city into a contract for 5 years for service for these license plate recognition cameras. I don't think that's the best service for the residents of your city because you should probably go on a yearly basis because you're talking like you're going to replace cameras unless you're proposing to add cameras. And maybe that's not in the staff report, but not that I have any say on this, but I'm opposed to this type of language and this type of contract. I think you should go as you already are. And on to 13N, and that's the street sweeper that I mentioned earlier. That's a lot of money, over 400,000. I think it's great that you have it. Every city should have a street sweeper, but again, we're talking CVAG. Aren't they supposed to be doing this too? So I don't know. I'm worried about the city residents paying all this money for things that maybe they don't have to pay for. And that's all I have. Thank you.
And Mr. Donald Ziegler regarding item 13W.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. My name is Donald Ziegler. I'd like to comment on item 13W on the consent calendar. Pardon me. You will be approving the council's goals and priorities for the next year. In the recap of environmental initiatives priority, you identify that you will hire a consultant to prepare a formal climate action plan. I think your goal to undertake development of a climate action plan is exactly what is needed to start preparing our city for rising summer temperatures. You also want the Resource Preservation and Enhancement Committee to evaluate and implement initiatives for this priority, which I think is also essential. My request here is that you allow the climate consultant you hire to include within the scope of their work an evaluation of how electrical power is delivered to our city and include in their plan the provision of resilient power that is not solely reliant on the SoCal Edison grid. I think it is time for our city to look at other available options for sourcing power. I attended the last meeting of the CVAG Energy and Sustainability Committee, where they approved hiring a consultant to plan for continued delivery of power to IID customers in the East Valley when their current contract expires. One option they're considering is the creation of a new publicly owned utility to serve that area. I also attended the last meeting of Desert Community Energy in Palm Springs, and they requested their staff to investigate microgrid technology for their customers, much as we have started doing here in Palm Desert. So cities to the east of us and cities to the west of us are working with nonprofit energy providers to find alternatives for delivery of power to their customers. We, meanwhile, are stuck trying to work with a profit-driven utility that seems to be doing whatever it can to prevent locally managed power. Palm Desert is represented on CVAG and DCE, so I think we should guide as best we can their work on power resilience with the possible idea that one day we may want to join the power solution one or the other comes up with. I'd like to take a few more seconds, if I could, regarding the council's agenda. I appreciate that Council Member Kelly included establishment of a microgrid as part of enhancing the mall. I also appreciate Mayor Quintanillas adding the resident emergency response management to the list of priorities. I've started working with my HOA board to re-energize our CERT plan, so being able to work with the city as we redo our plan will be very helpful. The microgrid and enhanced CERT planning goals can support one another because those of us creating a CERT plan could utilize 24-hour cooling centers supported by microgrids, not reliant on the Edison grid in our community disaster plans.
Thank you so very
So thank
much.
you.
Your 3 minutes are up.
Yes.
I appreciate your time. Would we like any comments or requesting of the staff report to follow up on these items?
Move the consent calendar.
Second.
Please take the vote.
Motion passes 5-0.
Having approved our consent calendar, I would like to request or offer a break, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, okay? 10 minutes, okay. Thank you so much. We will be back at 5:36 PM. Thank you so much. We are all back from our break. We move on to the consent calendar. Do we have any comments regarding anything before the action calendar?
Correct, Madam Mayor. You did conclude consent calendar and we'll move on to 14A.
This is the approval of resolutions approving the 2023-2024 mid-year budget adjustments and revised staff allocation schedule. Do we have any public comments regarding this item?
If we could do the staff presentation first, and then we'll take public comments. So they're
Perfect.
informed.
I'm just waiting for him to load the presentation for us. Great. Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Veronica Chavez, Director of Finance. You have before you the report in detail. I'm going to go through a brief presentation with the high notes for you. So this year's mid-year budget in the general fund, we're indicating a net positive adjustment at mid-year. Originally, we estimated that we would have a surplus of about $200,000 with some adjustments. Now that we're mid-year, we're looking at about a $2 million adjustment for the mid-year adjustment. And then at the end of the year, we're anticipating about $2.2 million as a surplus. The major changes to revenue in the general fund, we are decreasing the expected sales tax revenue just based on actual. This is trending exactly how we anticipated this year. We are actually increasing our TOTS estimate by 1.5 million. If you'll recall at budget, I was a little hesitant to increase it too much because we were going gangbusters at the time, and we continue to do that. So we are comfortable increasing that now. And then we're also increasing our interest earnings just by virtue of the market and what it's doing right now. So we're going to increase that by $2.5 million. Our major expenditures that we're changing are an increase to software licenses, utility costs, and then like a net zero on staffing and benefits. For our special funds or other funds, we are anticipating an adjustment request that will be covered by fund balance in the other funds. The adjustment reflects changes within the SARTA and other fund categories of about $2.1 million that will hit the fund balance for each of those. The major changes to revenue, of course, are SARTA. Previously, we would use the ROPS as our budget for SARTA. Because of our finance processes, we are adding it to the financial system. So that's why we're doing it both on revenue and expenditures. We are decreasing the cannabis estimate this year with the change from 10 to 5%. We made an estimate. Revenues are flowing in a little bit slower than we anticipated, so we're going to make that adjustment. And then an increase to the interest earnings on all of the housing accounts. Major expenditures to change are an increase to Measure A, and it should say gas tax cost. We're just adjusting those by 4.9 million. Again, the addition of the SARTA budget, and then an decrease to salaries and benefits that produce a net zero effect. The other item that is included in here is the staff allocation. Typically in the beginning of the year, we do this, and the city manager has authorization to make changes throughout the year. However, the way the resolution is written, the changes cannot take effect on paper. So we are adding that to the resolution so that we can come back at the end of the year with a ratification just to support the changes that are made to support the city business. That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. We don't have questions at this time. And if I may clarify, I believe before you'd asked for public comments before the staff report, so staff could respond on the comments.
Typically, my experience is to have the staff presentation so that the public's informed about the materials and they can be informed when they're giving their comments.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Do we have any comments on this item?
No comments, Madam Mayor.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion passes 5-0.
Moving on to item 14B, approve the resolution authorizing the issuance of University Park Community Facilities District 2021 Special Tax Bonds Series 2024. Can we please have the report?
Yes, ma'am. University Park Community Facilities District, the CFD, was established in 2005, and the city began issuing bonds on behalf of the district for certain public improvements. In May of 2021, the district approved the most recent levy of special tax in an aggregate amount of $50 million, of which $15 million of bonds were issued. Since then, we've seen tremendous growth at University Park, and the district is now prepared to issue the next tranche of bonds. The 2024 bonds will be issued not as non-rated securities. However, with strong debt service coverage and a strong value to lien ratio, it's still considered a good credit. The 2024 bonds will be issued at the approximate amount of about 11.9 million, which should yield about 10 million in proceeds for them to do their public improvements. The resolution of issuance that's being requested today approves and authorizes the mayor and city manager to execute the necessary documents required for the bond issuance. There are many professionals involved with the bond issuance, and they're noted in the staff report, and a representative from each of them are here today on the Zoom call to answer any questions for you. The 2024 bonds are not a debt or obligation of the city. The debt service for the bonds will be paid by the property owners through the CFD, and if approved tonight, the bonds will be priced in early March, and it will close by the end of March. That's the end of my report. Staff and the bond professionals are here to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments? Since we don't have any questions or comments, do we have anything online?
No public comment, Madam Mayor.
Thank you so much.
Move-
Entertain a motion.
Move the item as presented.
I'll second the motion.
Motion passes 5-0.
Moving on to item 14C, approve the agreement in substantial form by and between the City of Palm Desert and the County of Riverside, setting the terms for withdrawal from the Riverside County Library System. Please have the report.
Mayor and Council, Chris Escobedo, Assistant City Manager. This item sets forth the terms of withdrawal from the Riverside County Library System. Staff has been working with the county over the last 8 months to get to this point. Just briefly, when we embarked on this journey on June 8th, Council gave direction to appoint a task force to assist staff in the withdrawal process and in establishing a new library system. So we received that direction on June 8th. And between then and now, we've gone through all the procedural steps as specified in the education code by the council adopting a resolution to withdraw, notifying the county accepting it, and the county notifying the state of the city's intent to withdraw from the county library system. So today it brings to you two of the final agreements, one being the withdrawal agreement, and then after this, Gary Schaefer, Director of Library Services, will discuss the lease item for your consideration. A brief overview of the agreement are as follows and are as stipulated in the education code. On the lease and building, we will be leasing the current library facility for the time it takes us 3 years to build and operate our new library. We currently have an RFP out in the street. We have received great response so far. There's several vendors who are interested in participating with the city on creating a new library. On the secondary component, which is library contents, the city will receive 95% of the contents, the current contents of the facility. The 5% is largely the copiers because they're leased by the county, as well as the local history collection, which is also owned by the county. We'll be working with the local historical society to repopulate the historical component of the library, as well as once the agreement is effectuated, the county has 15 days to transfer all library records and data to the city. The funding is a third category. Beginning July 1, 2.2 million in annual revenue will begin being received by the city for the provision of library services. Funds will be tracked in a separate library fund from the Auditor Controller's Office, and $4 million that were set aside for capital improvements will also be transferred to the city by June 30th. This funding would be used for the creation of a new library. So in particular, I'll go over the funding for a minute. So right here on the first column, we have that 2.28 million estimate, which was provided by the county. And then we have the annual growth that it would experience, as does all other property tax revenue. So by 28, 29, based on the estimate, it'd be approximately 2.3%. The funding is made up of two components, which is AB8 statutory property tax and then redevelopment pass-through funds, creating those total numbers. Last year, we were given the estimate of 2.6 million from the county. So how we got here was they incorrectly gave us a number on AB8. So they gave us a higher number than what we've seen in our last discussions with them. And then on the pass-through, they wanted to provide a more conservative estimate. So they reduced their estimate to the 1.254. So because we had this information, it was important for us to further review the worksheets they had. So we're comfortable with the 954. Additionally, it was important for us to get these funds tracked separately so that we have an actual verification at the end of the year. And the reason why it's December 31st is we have to wait for the current fiscal year to close, the property tax rolls to close. That'll take place in August. So it'll give us our first shot at seeing how the numbers are truing up. And additionally, in November, there's a supplemental. That will be the all-in number. So between August and November, we will be working with the county to true up the 2.2 number. So just briefly, the other deal points in the agreement include the ability for the staff at the current library site to apply for future jobs here with the city. We're currently been staffing up, and those jobs will be rolling out in the next few weeks for additional library positions. We're looking to begin the transition in May of this year with an opening date of July 1. And then additionally, I wanted to note that the city had been carrying those the 695, which the council appropriated recently for library services. And then by converting to a direct library services, the city will become eligible for other funding sources like E-rate, grants, and scenic funding. So that also opens up a revenue potential for the city. So with that, that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have questions or comments? Do we have any public comments?
No public comment, Madam Mayor.
This time I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you so much. Our final item on the agenda is item 14E. Approve amendment number 2 to the city manager's employment agreement effective March 1st, 2024. I apologize. I had already flipped the page. 14D, execute the lease agreement between the City of Palm Desert and the Desert Community College District for 20,802 square feet of space in the library building located at the south end of the campus. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. Gary Schaefer, Director of Library Services, delighted to be with you this evening. As council is well aware, and we somewhat just discussed, we'll be taking over library services here in Palm Desert as of July 1 from the County of Riverside. We plan to operate from the existing facility located on the College of the Desert campus. The lease we've structured for 5 years, but we have the option to remove ourselves from the lease at any time with 60 days notice while we design and construct a new library closer to City Hall and on city-owned land. Can I get the next slide, please? Thank you. As with the current library, we will make use of 20,802 square feet, which is roughly half of the building. While the city originally helped to fund the construction of the building, College of the Desert will incur costs from our being there. We have worked with them to construct a lease agreement centered on cost recovery for utilities as well as groundskeeping services in and around the building. And that equals roughly $112,000. By having public safety provided by the Sheriff's Department, we actually save $46,648 annually. Next slide, please. Features of the lease include a lease credit of $23,000 in year 1. This is so the city can do some preliminary groundskeeping because the site has, it just needs It needs to be brought up to Palm Desert standards, we shall say. A cancellation clause, as I had said, should our new building be ready to occupy prior to the expiration of the lease, maintenance of the building, roof and fixtures and systems during our occupancy. So systems include HVAC, plumbing, electrical, wiring, etc. The ability for the city to make modest upgrades in terms of paint and replacement of some of the flooring in surfaces in the building, not all, but some of them are more worn than others. And modest annual increases not to exceed 3% per year. That's for the utilities portion, and a percentage matching the COLA for the district for the groundskeeping portion, which is roughly about $40,000 per year. This concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? No questions, but my gratitude. This has been quite the undertaking, and looking forward to how this will play out as an excellent addition and our services that we can offer to our residents and guests.
Well, my gratitude to the council for its support, and also to my colleagues. I would be remiss if not thanking them for all the amazing support that they've offered us. So thank you all.
Wonderful. Seeing no additional comments, I'll entertain a motion.
Move the item as presented.
I will second that.
Motion passes 5-0.
Now we move on to the last tab that I moved too early. Item 14E, approve amendment number 2 to the city manager's employment agreement effective March 1st, 2024.
Had to put that down, Gary. Thanks. So good evening, everyone. Andrea Staley, HR Manager for the City of Palm Desert. On February 7th of this year, the City Council had a closed session to discuss the city manager's evaluation. During the closed session, the city manager received an evaluation and made a request to City Council to amend his contract, granting an additional week of vacation. City Council agreed to consider the additional week at today's council meeting. So if council approves the amendment, the city manager will be granted an additional week of vacation per year. All other terms of compensation and benefits will remain the same. I would like to mention that there is a minor correction, that this would be amendment number 3 in the city manager's contract. So with that, I am available to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments? Okay, no questions or comments for Ms. Andrew, but I do have the comment and to say thank you to our city manager for all that you do, given your rapid response and your leadership during our storm recovery, your ability to act quickly and give staff and empower them with the tools and the financial backing in order to get this done. This 1 week is very, very well deserved. You work around the clock. You're not a checkout. It's 5 p.m. Not my call kind of person. So it's greatly appreciated, and we're hopeful that you'll take this week of R&R. Thank you. We get a motion.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
I will second for Jan.
Motion passes 5-0.
We do not have any public hearings at this time. Do we have any information items? No information items from our staff. Any additional comments from my peers? Well, thank you so very much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. Have a great weekend. And on Monday, remember, we celebrate President's Day. Have a lovely one. Thank you. Meeting is concluded at 5:57 p.m.